Hi, welcome to the mini lecture on differences between laws, policies, and regulations. I wanted to clarify that because I talked about that in the Module 4 lecture. So what are the differences? Laws are actually passed by legislatures and governing bodies. And so, that's when a bill becomes a law, the president signs it. But I mean, other governments can pass laws or statutes. State governments pass laws. Municipalities and cities can pass ordinances, and tribes have the authority to pass their own laws and ordinances. And so the various levels of government pass laws. Policies, on the other hand, are ideas and the greater ideologies and approaches to any given issue. The book talks about executive orders, but there's three different types of executive actions that can be taken. There's proclamations, there's executive orders, and there's memorandums or memoranda. And so an example of a presidential action is when the president declares a national emergency, and the president has a power to do that without congressional approval. And by doing so, it gives the president 123 powers. And Congress actually now has the power to end or overturn a national emergency. We talked a little bit about legislative policies and laws and basically how a bill becomes a law. I just want to emphasize that every law starts with an idea. And so that idea is driven primarily by policy. Congress, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. And basically the legislative agenda is set by the party leader in each chamber. So in the Senate, it's the majority leader. Currently, the majority leader is Mitch McConnell, a Republican from Kentucky. And so if I click on this website here, I can see what the stances on some of these current issues are from that perspective. In the House of Representatives, it's controlled by the Democrats, and so the agenda is set by the Speaker of the House, who is Nancy Pelosi. I can click on this. I can see what their issue stances are. But the president also has a legislative agenda because the president has a power to sign or not sign bills, and so they're constantly interacting with the Congress. What happens after a bill is enacted? It becomes a slip law. Then it becomes part of it becomes numbered, and then once it gets officially codified, that means it becomes permanent. If that's not all, we have regulations. What are regulations? Who establishes these regulations? And so the federal agencies are underneath the president. And so basically presidents can establish regulations. And why are regulations established? So when in the book it talks about implementation of policies. Well, when a law is drafted, you can't just read the law and say, "Oh, this is what I need to do." Sometimes the agency that's assigned to implement the law has to draft regulations in order to have rules for implementing. The public can attempt to change a proposed regulation, and so that's when it's open for public comment. So as an advocate, you have an opportunity to comment on some of these regulations if you think it impacts your constituents or the people that you work for negatively, but you might also support something, so you can issue support for a regulation as well. The executive branch can regulate or deregulate depending on the policy position. During the proposed rule stage, you can comment on the regulations, and so that's a time for you as an advocate to address your concerns. And regulations impact the way that programs are funded and implemented at the ground level. So they do impact you as a social worker when you're delivering some of these services. Laws and policies are different. They're not necessarily the same thing. Sometimes we use them interchangeably. Policy can be bigger. It's a big idea for addressing issues. And then laws can be enacted around the policies.